Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a fascinating look under the hood of a digital solution that is frankly completely changing the landscape of early childhood education. We're going to be dissecting the research and the incredibly rigorous psychometric testing behind an app called Language Screen. Now, let's be clear up front. This isn't just some fun little tablet game. It's actually a highly sophisticated tool designed to help educators assess children's oral language abilities both quickly and accurately. We already know that language skills are the absolute foundation for formal education, for literacy, and honestly, even a child's psychosocial development. So understanding how we can actually measure these skills effectively, it's absolutely crucial. All right, let's dive right into this.
Now that is a pretty bold question, right? I mean, for decades, accurate, medical-grade screening for language disorders has always required expensive, time-consuming administration by highly trained professionals. We've kind of just assumed that doing things fast automatically means doing things inaccurately. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? What if having the right data, powered by some seriously advanced psychometrics, could put that exact same diagnostic power right into the hands of an everyday classroom teacher using nothing more than a tablet?
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with 1, the language mystery, then 2, the 4 pillars. After that, 3, the reliability engine, 4, precision and validity, 5, fairness under the hood, and we'll wrap it all up with 6, the traffic light solution. Section 1, the language mystery. I really want you to notice the word invisible here. You know, if a child has a speech articulation issue, say a lisp or a stutter, well, that's immediately obvious to a teacher. But population estimates show that around 7% of children enter school with developmental language disorders that are entirely hidden. 7%. These kids might just sit quietly copying what their peers are doing just to figure out how to follow instructions. Their difficulties often only come to light way later, usually when they get referred for behavioral issues. Since language is literally the foundation for everything from reading comprehension to just making friends on the playground, catching these invisible disorders early is crucial if we want to prevent a downward spiral in their education. Section 2, the 4 pillars. So the researchers actually built Language Screen on this core theoretical foundation that in early childhood, language is best described as a unitary construct. Think of it as a single latent trait. To actually capture this, the app uses 4 integrated subskills. First up, expressive vocabulary, where kids just name stylized pictures. Second is receptive vocabulary, where they match spoken words to one of 4 images. Third, sentence repetition, basically repeating sentences exactly as they hear them. And fourth, listening comprehension, which involves answering questions about short spoken stories. Now, while these are distinct tasks and they each boast really solid individual reliabilities ranging from 0.74 to 0.80, the data proves they work beautifully together to produce one comprehensive unified language score. Section 3, the reliability engine. 350,000. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the approximate number of children ranging from 3.5 to almost 9 years old included in the standardization sample. They didn't just test this on a few dozen kids in a single perfectly controlled laboratory. No, the psychometric properties of this app are backed by an incredibly massive, undeniable data set that was collected across thousands of actual schools. So, the million-dollar question is, what did that massive data set actually reveal? Well, it revealed a Chromebax alpha of 0.92 and a person separation reliability of 0.94. If you're a bit of a stats nerd, you know that the standard threshold for acceptable reliability in research is usually hovering around 0.70. So hitting a 0.92, that is absolutely exceptional. It means the internal consistency of this test is off the charts. It acts like a perfectly calibrated scale. You can completely trust the number it gives you every single time. And the best part? It's not just reliable in that one specific moment. It's highly stable over time. When researchers went back and retested almost 10,000 children after an average gap of about 6.8 months, the correlation was a very impressive 0.78. Think about how much a kid grows and changes in nearly 7 months. This proves the application doesn't just spit out random noise. It's capturing a genuinely stable, enduring measure of a child's actual language capability as they develop. Section 4, precision and validity. Now, to prove validity, meaning does it actually measure what it claims to measure, the researchers set up what's basically a heavyweight title match. In one corner, we have the Language Screen app. It takes about 10 minutes, automatically scores the results, and is administered by an untrained classroom teacher or teaching assistant. In the other corner, we have the clinical gold standard, the self-assessment. That one takes about 40 minutes, requires manual scoring, and absolutely must be administered by a highly trained speech and language therapist. And boom. Here is the knockout punch. The scores from that quick 10-minute app run by everyday teachers correlated with the 40-minute professional clinical assessment at a very high R equals 0.74. That's incredible. Furthermore, the research showed that the app is highly sensitive to intervention. When kids actually got language support, their language screen scores went up right alongside their clinical test scores. It's a remarkable piece of validation that this lightweight, easy-to-use digital tool acts as a seriously robust educational and medical screener.
Section 5. Fairness under the hood. Okay, the real secret sauce here is the application of the Rasch model. Look at how this maps out visually. It shows how perfectly the test questions scale in difficulty. Because the data fits the Rasch model so incredibly well, the total score produced by the app is what statisticians call a sufficient statistic. Basically, it gives you all the information you need, full stop, without requiring any complex secondary analysis. And notice the spread here. Receptive vocabulary questions tend to group near the bottom because they're the easiest for kids, while those listening comprehension questions sit right at the top, proving to be the most challenging cognitive task. It's a perfectly logical progression. But hey, a test is really only good if it's fair to everyone taking it, right? So the researchers subjected the app to rigorous DIF analysis, differential item functioning. Think of this as a super strict statistical background check for every single question, just to ensure that a specific item isn't secretly biased. For instance, they're making sure a question doesn't unfairly trip up a child simply because of their gender, or because they happen to be learning English as an additional language. The results of that strict analysis? Pretty striking, honestly. An overwhelming 90% of the questions on the app showed absolutely zero significant bias across age, gender, or language background. The remaining 10% showed only minor, totally manageable variances. Bottom line, this means the test is fundamentally equitable across the board. Now, to be totally transparent, the app did detect some differences in the population. Overall, girls scored slightly higher than boys, and children with an English as an additional language scored lower than native speakers. But here is exactly why this matters. The Rasch analysis proves that these score differences are not a flaw or a bias in the app itself. They actually represent true, real-world variations in language exposure and development. The instrument isn't biased, it's just accurately reporting reality as it exists. Section 6. The traffic light solution. So what do we do with all this? The developers translated all of that incredibly heavy, rigorous science into a beautifully intuitive user interface. A simple traffic light report. Green means a standard score of 90 or above. You're good to go, no concerns. Amber is a score of 82 to 89. Monitor the kid and maybe provide some extra support. And red, that's 81 or below, meaning immediate intervention is required. It takes all the heavy analytical lifting completely out of the process. Teachers don't need a degree in statistics. They can just focus entirely on helping the child, rather than agonizing over how to interpret complex data. And that brings us to the core takeaway of this explainer. We've seen the data. Language Screen is so much more than a simple vocabulary game on a tablet. It's a remarkably robust, incredibly reliable digital solution that completely democratizes access to high-level language assessment. By transforming a grueling 40-minute clinical process into a 10-minute teacher-friendly app with a simple traffic light output, we are quite literally removing the biggest barriers to early intervention. Which leaves us with a pretty powerful thought to end on. If every educator now has the ability to easily identify those hidden, invisible language disorders before they can derail a child's education, just how dramatically can we change the trajectory of our children's futures? It's a massively exciting prospect, and looking at this data, we are already well on our way. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.